It is based on real events. I was 13 when my brother Billy went missing. He was 10. We were supposed to look out for each other, right? But on that day, something went wrong. Billy went for a walk alone and never came back. Not by lunch, not by dinner, never. Of course, I was questioned. Our whole family was questioned. Statistics show that 80% of crimes against children are committed in the family. When a child goes missing, the first thing they always check is the parents and next of kin. But I had nothing to say to the police. I didn't see who took Billy. There was nothing I could do, nothing I could do to help. No one ever blamed me for what happened. I was only 13, and I wasn't even there. But if I'd been with Billy that day, that man, whoever he was, probably wouldn't have come after us. If he'd wanted both of us, both boys to sell or some other twisted thing I don't want to think about, he'd have snuck up and taken both of us, right? But he only took Billy. So he's almost certainly the kind of guy who doesn't track down victims on purpose, but drives around looking for the right vulnerable kid. Disorganized criminals, the ones who act spontaneously. Then, if I had been with Billy that day, it would have ended well. Why did we assume that Billy had been kidnapped at all? That was the official story, eventually put forward by the police, after days of searching, questioning, analyzing, and parsing witness statements. A strange van was seen in our neighborhood, and in it was a white man in his 40s with a mustache and a baseball cap. You see where this is going, don't you? Practically the model pedophile kidnapper. No one remembers his license plate number. But I think there was a sketch. Useless, of course. There are millions of white guys like that. Guys in their 40s, with mustaches, which, by the way, can be shaved off in a minute, and wearing an ugly baseball cap, all over the country. Missing Billy Sanders. 10 years old, 3 feet 10 inches tall, skinny. He was wearing a blue t-shirt, white gym shorts, white sneakers. Could be a white male, approximately 40 years old. Drives a white van. Anyone with any information, please? God. I learned that by heart. We, of course, got ransom calls. 3 times, 3 different people, none of whom had any idea where Billy was. The cops explained to us that it's common when a child goes missing. The phones are ringing off the hook with calls from all sorts of half-crazy bystanders and scammers hoping to sell information they don't have for a few thousand. Which they don't have. Billy was never found. But, it must be said, the parents never gave up hope. The man had him, he was taken by force, probably did something bad to him. Did something bad to him, we never said what exactly, but he's alive and one day he'll be back. Something will happen. That creep will die, he'll get run over, the cops will catch him, he'll get hit by a car, he'll just slip up. And Billy will have a chance to escape. He'll break free and come back to us. One day. I know my parents never stopped believing that. To them, Billy was alive, just not with them. We didn't make a cenotaph. That's what they call empty graves, like the ones they build for guys who died in Iraq and whose bodies can't be brought home for one reason or another, or have a wake or any other mourning gathering. Usually in such cases parents don't touch the missing child's room, but not in my case. Billy's room was redecorated every couple of years. New things, toys to make him grow up. After all, he was growing up, he was going to need new things when he came back. Mom and Dad waited and hoped. They refused to accept even the thought of Billy being gone forever. As for me, I shut down even more. You wouldn't think I was a particularly cheerful and upbeat kid before all this, but after my brother disappeared, I pretty much became a recluse. This did not bother my parents too much, rather the opposite. Who would want to lose another child? After school I went straight home and spent most of my time in my room. I hardly had any friends. I hadn't been very social before, but after what happened to Billy, even my high school buddies. When something like this happens to someone you just don't know how to deal with it. It seems like the easiest and best thing to do is just walk away, don't touch him. But what if he is traumatized, worried, and doesn't want to talk to anyone right now, much less have fun? It should come as no surprise that my studies didn't go very well from that day on, and I never got into college. Even though everyone told me I was capable, I probably could have gotten in if I had tried, but I wasn't interested in anything anymore. After 18, I stayed at my parents' house. Although, I must say, I wasn't particularly close to them either. No, they never blamed me for what happened, but they couldn't forgive me for being the only one in our family to accept that Billy wasn't coming back. That he was gone. Billy came back 6 years after he disappeared. He'd been picked up in some crack house in Pasadena, either with a stolen credit card or a fake check. I didn't get it right. Nobody cared about that kind of detail, you know. What mattered was that at the police station, Angel, the name he'd been using for the last few years, suddenly gave his supposedly real name. Billy Sanders. He gave the day and year of his abduction, described his family, described the kidnapper. It really was the guy in the van. He offered Billy a ride. Billy to his house, and he agreed. I told him right away that my brother wasn't that stupid, but who listened to me at the time? That man, Harry, was really doing bad things to Angel, to Billy. Bad things. My mother sobbed as she read the transcript of the interrogation. I looked at it with one eye, I've seen worse things in the crime columns. Angel got off easy. Harry drank heavily, and at 15 Angel was practically out of his control. Running away, prostitution, petty theft and drug use. He'd go back to Daddy, as he called Harry, when the going got tough. Angel said he remembered his real family, but he thought it was too late to come back to us. That we wouldn't accept him as he was. That there was too much to fix, and all that kind of stuff. But a few weeks ago, Harry drowned in the bathtub. Drunk, of course. Angel pulled him out, even tried CPR, but eventually realized it was no use. Didn't call for help either. He grabbed all the cash and left as soon as he could. His eyes were looking in a familiar direction. The joint, the police station. I had to admit, Angel did look like my brother. And even the mole under his left eye. And some of the details he did know. Except there was nothing in that information that you couldn't get from the newspapers or the internet or see on TV. Some things he just knew how to guess about. You know, I always liked Team X better. It was just when I got the Transformers insert, he told me at breakfast when I tried to discreetly test him with a trick question. The Transformers sticker had been on the missing persons report. It would have been logical to assume that they were Billy's favorite. But Angel hadn't fallen for my ruse, and what's more, he'd hit the mark himself. Billy really was an X-Men fan. I was confused for a second, and a chill ran down my spine. But then I remembered that one of the pictures of Billy that was stacked up all over the house showed my brother standing in a Wolverine t-shirt. Mom and Dad believed the foundling immediately and rejoiced at every successful test. Of course they were, because Billy was remembering his home, his old life. After a couple of weeks, even I started to think that Billy had never gone anywhere, that he had always lived with us. My parents weren't just happy, they seemed at peace. Angel fit into our family pretty well. He was sweet and seemed non-threatening. Being around him made me almost forget that he was gay and not my brother. Angel sensed that I didn't believe him, and always tried to be especially natural and friendly in my presence. One day I asked him if he held a grudge against me for what had happened. "Don't be silly, Big M," he replied. He must have overheard that from his parents. Billy and I always used nicknames between us. It wasn't your fault. In fact, it wasn't anyone's fault, except that creep Harry and myself. I shouldn't have gotten in the van with him. "I'm your big brother, little B," I replied. "I'm supposed to look out for you." My eyes tingled, and I felt like I was about to cry for the first time in 6 years. My brother hugged me. It's not my fault, nothing. When the cops, having finished checking Angel's story, recommended that my parents have a DNA test to reliably establish or deny kinship, my mother was outraged. I understood her feelings. After all, she had convinced herself that her son was alive and at home. The test could have ruined everything, taken Billy away from her again. My father didn't dare insist. Later, however, after weighing and thinking it over, they decided to find out the truth. That is, for the mother, to confirm that Billy was Billy and that everything was all right. So as not to traumatize him further, the father came up with the idea of taking the sample secretly, without announcing aloud his doubts and mistrust. After all, if it's Billy, which we hardly doubt, imagine the pain he'll feel when he finds out we don't truly acknowledge it. Of course, Angel knew all about the test. I'd seen him tamper with the samples at night. Of course, I knew all about it when he took my mug to the kitchen the day before. He needed my DNA. I could have exposed him then or shown him I knew the truth, but I didn't. It was all good. Billy's room was no longer empty, and my mom was smiling, you know. It was 2 months before something went wrong for the first time. I was ready for something like this. Now that the DNA test confirmed the kinship and therefore his legend, Angel felt safe and relaxed. I don't think he really wanted to upset my mom. We can't forget that he was raised by the street and a pedophile alcoholic. I doubt Angel was accustomed to watching what flew off his tongue. He just said what he said, and it made my mother cry. I wasn't going to leave it like that. This guy is here to please my parents, not upset them. I dragged my brother to the bathroom between our bedrooms so my parents wouldn't hear us. My brother wouldn't say that to our mother, I told him sternly. You're not in a brothel anymore, you're in a decent house. You have to watch your manners and your behavior. He snorted and tried to get around me. You're only 3 years older than me, Big M. Don't imagine you're going to be my daddy. Just because you didn't follow me 6 years ago doesn't mean you can start now. I know who you are, I said, looking him straight in the eye. And I'm not going to let you upset my parents. That's not why you're here. Remember that. He went pale, but he didn't give himself away. A cheeky smile played across his face. And what are you going to do to me, Big M? I'm your brother, and this house is as much mine as much as it is yours. You think you can just kick me out like that? Angel threw off my arm, blocking his way out of the bathroom and headed for the door. But before he could even grab the handle, I yanked him back toward me, pushing him against the tiled wall. Even though Angel had been raised God knows where, he wasn't used to defending himself by force, so he chickened out. Let go. He shrieked and fluttered helplessly, and I kept my hand on his throat, not squeezing, but sensitive enough. I could have easily strangled him if I had wanted to, or, conversely, if I had lost control of myself. But instead I just told him, behave yourself, little B, or I'll do to you what I did to my real brother.